I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. I'm here with Jerry Redman, and we're doing the RE/MAX report.
Jim, how are you this month?
I'm doing well. How about you? How's it looking out there?
You know what? It's interesting right now. We had a bit of a slowdown in June compared to May, which typically happens. A lot of people start to gear up for summer holidays with their kids. School's out, a lot of graduations, sort of things like that.
People are busy.
People are busy.
Yeah.
So, we were down a little bit, but it's interesting as we talked before. Average house, median house prices, one's up, one's down a little bit, about 1%.
So kind of like hanging in there then, right?
Yeah, we're holding fairly steady, which is a little bit surprising because the amount of sales in June were down about 20%.
Oh, wow.
The month before, or from June of last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is, a pretty good sized drop.
What's inventory looking like?
Inventory is going up.
Yeah.
It continue to rise. We're probably sitting around 12 months worth of inventory on the market for homes to sell. Days on market are going up. So we're seeing.
So that should put some pressure on housing prices, no?
It should,
Yeah.
But like we talked a little bit about last time, is the average house price it's one of those ones without really understanding and being able to look at the whole picture. An average house price is everyone's used to spending $1 million, let's say, but they're getting a whole lot more house today for $1 million than they were 2 years ago when the market was going crazy. So that's where really sitting down with someone that understands the market and can show you what the stats really mean. Because, one thing about stats, you can always make them look how you want to make them look.
Yeah, you can manipulate them, that's for sure. We did have that 0.25 drop. Did that spur any activity out there?
I don't think it really did. I think a lot of it might have been built into the leading up to it, because May was nice and busy and saw a lot of activity in May. Definitely there's people that moved off the fence, but I think there's also a lot of people still waiting to see more.
I think people are waiting to see like a second and a third cut and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So
there's some great opportunities, I think, the market right now for buyers. I mean, if you're looking at townhouses or condos, I mean, the condos sales have dropped like 30% this month.
Wow.
So there's a lot of activity or lack of activity there. So there's probably some really good buying opportunities out in that segment of the market right now.
And that's probably both in the ones that are under development and the ones that are actually pre-owned.
Pre-owned and assignment sales and things like that, for sure.
Okay.
There's a lot of that going on right now with the...
Has that Airbnb kind of thing forced a few homes onto the market?
It definitely has. There's no doubt about it. There's some people that are selling because of that. There's people looking at different ways to deal with it, but it's challenging because a lot of times, a lot of this stuff was purchased at a much higher market. Yeah. So it's pretty hard right now to
and a much lower interest rate.
Much lower interest rate and a busier market. So today to sell it, going to be a bit of a challenge.
And we're going to talk about that next time, a little bit about housing affordability.
We are, yeah. We're going to see if we can come up with some examples that kind of show, we can find a couple houses where we can get a history going back over the last 20 years about how much they've gone up in price and affordability at interest rates.
What that monthly payment really is,
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is a monthly payment. And you know what we'll do is on the next one, we'll also talk a little bit about, we had some guys in our office talking this week about basement suites, carriage homes, adding them to your property, how much it might cost you to add them versus how much that rent will actually reduce your monthly payment by,
right?
And what the cost would increase your monthly payment by. So we'll bring that in next time and talk a little bit about that.
That'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, because it's quite surprising when you look at going, okay, if I put a basement suite in, it might cost me $75,000 or $100,000. Okay, to finance that, $600 a month, let's say, but I can get $2,200 or $2,300 a month rent. My payment actually drops out of pocket for me. So we're seeing a lot of people looking for those basement suites and that mortgage helper.
Yeah, and does that not taint your kind of like your principal residence kind of exemption though a little bit?
No, because it's still your principal residence.
Okay.
And even if it's if it's your summer home and you've got a suite in it that's rented out, you're not paying the vacancy tax because it's still rented out. So there's different ways to look at it. But as a first-time home buyer, suites are huge.
That's a great way to get into a bigger home than you can afford at the time. And you kind of work your way into, like as your family gets bigger, you just kind of take over more of the house, I guess,
you
right?
can grow. My first two homes had basement suites, and you know what? They were phenomenal. And by the time you get tired of your tenant, they would show up with a rent check, and all of a sudden you can live with them again. And I said, by the time they show up with a rent check and you're tired with them 5 days later, it's time to get rid of your basement suite. But definitely a great way to get into the market.
I had roommates in my first house too, my brother and his wife. But I think a lot of people start that way, right? Because it just helps pay the mortgage, right?
Totally. Any way you can do it. I mean, I find a lot of people starting out and they grew up with and left their parents' house that was not their parents' first home. And that's what they're expecting to go into, right? And the mortgage helpers and things like that, it can really get you on the right track. As I say, buying that first home you got to think of it as a stepping stone, right? It's like thinking about trying to step on a stone across a creek. You want to make sure you're sure-footed. And that first home purchase is really the one that can set you up for your future wealth.
Well, getting you into the market too, and just getting you kind of established, and then that down payment kind of like anxiety kind of disappears because you're using that first home as your down payment on your next home now too.
Right. Building that equity, right?
Yeah.
What it comes down to. And, the other thing too is a lot of people say, well, I can't afford to buy a home in Kelowna. It's still too expensive. The other option too is to look in other cities and buy a rental property. Allow you to get into the market. And, I did that when I lived in Vancouver 30 years ago, was we stayed renting in Vancouver and purchased actually a condo in Kelowna at the time and had a renter up here. And it was very easy to make our rent payment to somebody else when somebody was actually paying a mortgage off for us. So
that's a good way to do it too, right? Yeah. Using debt for leverage as opposed to like, to kind of like, instead of throwing that money away, right?
Exactly. So I think there's lots to it. But yeah, so this month here, our residential sales were down marginally. Price-wise, we were down a little bit, just a little over 1% on your average house price. Median house price went up just about 1%. So again, that's looking at those two different stats. And if you want to be positive, average house price went up. You want to be negative in your stats, median price went down. So that's where, again, we talk about getting in front of someone that understands the market and can really help you digest what this information is and what it's all about.
So those homes around the average home price or the median home price, those are kind of more stable than, say, something at the higher end, though, too, wouldn't it be? Or
definitely, the high end is probably where we are, have fallen off, and it's a little bit harder. I mean, the $1.5 million, $2 million homes were selling like crazy when the interest rates were low. When you were getting 5-year money at 1.5% for a little while there, that financing that $1 million mortgage was quite palatable in comparison to financing it today. So it's definitely a lot harder to sell those homes right now.
A lot harder, less buyers.
Obviously.
Less buyers can qualify for those homes.
Yeah. But when you drop down, we are in the lower, when you start getting into homes now, we do have some homes back under $700,000 happening in, Glen Rose and different areas like that. We're still seeing some multiple offers in those areas. So there's still an active market out there. And right now, if you're selling a home, price point is key. You can't come out of the gate and be $50,000 over the market value of your home because it will sit. But if you come out and price your home to today's pricing, you should get activity, especially on the bottom end of the market.
And I think we talked about this a little bit last time. There's developers out there right now buying down the interest rate. You can't do that as on a personal residence when you're selling it.
No, you can't. Unfortunately, it's against our regulatory body here, but developments can do it. The developers are able to do it. It does play with deposits or down payments and things like that a little bit. It skews some things. You might have to come up with more of a deposit, but it definitely gives that stability to somebody saying, hey, we've got a nice 3.5% interest rate.
Because you can do that in the U.S. though too, I think, right?
You can do that. A homeowner can buy down a rate in the U.S., but not in Canada.
Because it probably would be a great incentive if you said, hey, I'll buy down the rate for a couple of years, because I think a lot of people think rates will be much lower in a couple of years.
Yeah, we actually we took this to the bank probably about 6 months ago to talk to a couple of our mortgage brokers about it, because I was reading about it happening in the U.S. And unfortunately not available in Canada for that. That
might spur some activity though, but I guess you can't change the rules. You can just ask, but
it would. I think it would be. I think it would be more effective than a $25,000 price reduction.
I do too, right? Because I think a lot of times when people are dropping the price, they don't see it as interesting as like, I'll buy on the rate. I think it's just like, it's like buying a car too, right?
Yep.
When somebody tells you it's 0% financing, you're just like, yeah, I'll take that one, right? But if they tell you they dropped the price by $3,000, you're just like, I don't know, right?
Yeah, and it's just, and you're pocketing the same money at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but
it works out the same.
It's a perception situation for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think people are shy on that interest rate, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's the summer look like going forward? What's July and August look like?
Well, you know what? July and August, it really can be a mixed bag because you get a lot of tourists in town that can take up a lot of time looking at property and things like that. Some of them buy, but they're typically not your average buyer. So summertime usually softens off a little bit. Our busiest usually is definitely spring and fall. Definitely the busiest part of our market, but a lot of it can depend. I mean, we do have another Bank of Canada rate coming up at the end of July.
Yeah. And then they'll take a break till September.
Yeah.
So that'll be our last chance for a rate cut will be in July until the fall.
The fall, right. Yeah. And the July, I've read an article from the Royal Bank from July 1st that looks like they're anticipating we're going to see a quarter point drop in July. And
I believe they were right last time too, right? I think the Royal Bank was right.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I do believe a lot of people are still, a quarter point or half a point is still not enough to really make a lot of these homes affordable. So that's where the basement suite idea, carriage homes, that sort of stuff.
So if you're out there looking, is that the type of home you want to look at too? Like anything that already has like a basement suite or some kind of mortgage helper, right?
Yeah.
Or suitable, yeah,
definitely. And if you've got a home that you're trying to sell that would be suitable, maybe go out and get a quote on getting a suite put in it, so a buyer could come along and say, "Oh, great! You know what? They've already had this home looked at. It is suitable, and it would cost me $50,000 or $100,000 to suite it, because it can vary dramatically on what's in the home now versus plumbing and that sort of stuff."
What kind of what value would be added to a home? Like say it had a suite in there. What if the two homes are next door to each other and one had a suite and one didn't have a suite? There's obviously a bit of a premium on the one with a suite.
Sure. Thanks for putting me on the spot with that one, Jim. You know what? Again, that's going to vary from area, size of suite, the rental that you can get out of the suite. But there's definitely a premium because now banks used to only be able to take a portion of that income. They're taking 100% of that income
100%.
now.
Oh, wow.
Right, which is a change.
So that's a revenue stream you can basically discount back, right?
Totally.
So,
right. So if you get $2,000 a month rent out of your basement suite, you're talking
put that right into the mortgage, right?
Totally. $300,000 of your mortgage is being paid off by your tenant.
Wow.
So that's the value of doing it. I know a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't want anybody living in my home," but you know what? There's trade-offs.
But I think you said that too. Like when you're starting out and you say you don't have any kids and you're renting out your suite, and as your family grows, then you can start taking, as your income grows, you can start taking over more of the house.
Yeah.
You gotta grow into your house.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I had two. My sister actually had two homes with suites in them. And that was our first jump into the market, and it just makes it a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
So highly recommend it to look at least investigate it, understand what it's all about. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want a tenant in my basement because, good tenants, bad tenants." I found when we were living in the home, the tenants that you didn't really like, as soon as they found you lived in the home with them, that they weren't going to want to rent from you anyway.
Yeah, so if they're party animals, they're probably just like, well, that's going to cause nothing but friction. Right?
Exactly. So we had, knock on wood, great success when we were doing it, and very little friction at all with our tenants over the years, but definitely helped us get our foot in the door and get started.
I mean, we do live in a beautiful area. That's always going to be a draw. But, it would be great to see some housing prices come down for sure. Or not so much. I think the interest rates mean more than the housing prices coming down, right?
I think housing prices dropping dramatically is going to not happen here because of where we live, right? Yeah. I mean, we are an ingress area. People want to come here. They want to retire here. Yeah.
You just have to look out the window to believe that, right?
Yeah. Looks like we've got summer coming here. We're talking about 35 degrees this weekend.
Yeah, it's supposed to be hot, right?
I don't know about you guys, but it was interesting. Last week, there was no boats on the lake. On Saturday morning, we woke up and the lake was absolutely packed with boats. So people are here. They're enjoying what we have to offer, and this is why we continue to grow.
That's why we live here for sure too, right? So
definitely.
Anything else you want to add for today?
No, I think not. Just other than the fact that if you are a buyer, that's always a good time to be, start shopping and looking around and be familiar with the market. Right? Be prepared. Understand the market. So when you see that property that you really like, you're not questioning, is it the right one? Is it the right value and things like that?
Allow yourself some time, right, to make good informed decisions as opposed to having to make that shotgun decision at the last second.
Totally. And the quote I heard years ago was, "It's not timing the market, it's time in the market." And, everyone says, "Is there a bad time to buy?" You know what? There's never a bad time to buy real estate. The issue comes down to is making sure you're never forced to sell your real estate. If you're forced to sell real estate, that's usually when something's gone wrong for you, right?
There's another saying that a good time to buy was 10 years ago and a better time to buy is today.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So, it just works out, right? So
it does. You know what? The growth, and I've bought one of my houses in 2007 at the peak of the market. In 2008, everyone thought we'd never see those prices again.
Yeah.
Well, when the market changed in 2013, 2007 prices were passed so fast it wasn't even funny. So,
yeah, absolutely. I am looking forward to that housing affordability one. I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
So
we'll look at that. I'll try to come up with a condo, townhouse, and single family example.
well,
in that
tall
for
order.
sure.
There you go.
Yeah. I'll get somebody working on that back at the office.
There you go. Lots to look forward to. I think that'll be a really good one and give people a lot of good information. And thank you for watching today. And thank you to Jerry Redman and Remax Kelowna, the sponsors of this show. And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.